This is the all-new Dodge Charger Daytona EV.
It is the replacement to the gas-guzzling Dodge Challenger Hellcat.
But is it a worthy replacement? Is it better looking? Is it more comfortable on the inside? Is it built better? Is it more fun to drive? That's what we need to find out in today's video.
My name is Todd, my son Austin and I, we make all sorts of videos here on Performance on Wheels. There's really only one way to find out if this will be better than that. We need to get after it. Let's start off the video by talking about the outside, and just very first, let's talk about the dimensions. The new Charger is almost 10 inches longer than the Challenger. It's almost 5 inches wider, and it's even a few inches taller. And let's talk about weight. Obviously, we have batteries all underneath, and we know batteries are heavy, but 1,300 pounds more is what the Charger Daytona weighs over the Hellcat. The 9-year run of the Hellcat, it's a legendary design, it's a legendary look. Everyone on the road knows what this car is. And it didn't change much. It became more aggressive, it became more appealing, the lights got a little fancier. And the design, it still looks good even in 2025, knowing that this is a 2-year-old brand new car that can be had today for a little over 70 grand. But the looks of this car are timeless in my opinion, all the way back to, oh man, what was it, 2008 if my memory's right, when the Challenger came out. It's a timeless design. It is like a muscle car, and that's what they're saying the Charger is.
We need to talk about what the description of a muscle car even is before we start talking about the design of this thing. They've always been known to be loud front engines, poor handling. They've kind of steered away from that and gone more towards sports cars with the Mustang and the Camaro, but the Challenger stayed true to being a good muscle car. Is this still a good muscle car? We will need to find that out here shortly, but let's start off with the design and see if it even looks like one. The Daytona EV features one of the most sinister looking front ends I've seen on a car in a very long time, and that is due to what they call the R-Wing, which is named after a rocket scientist who his sole purpose was to make cars stick to the road as much as they possibly can. His goal was basically downforce, and that was his invention. And that is the sole purpose of this R-Wing here. It basically sucks air through the front of the grille, holding down, basically a spoiler on the front of the car, holding down the front end to keep it stuck to the road. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure it does a whole lot on a car that weighs this amount. However, it just looks fantastic. The front end view of this car with how unbelievably wide it is in your rear view mirror is unlike anything that I've seen on the road. We also have that LED light bar across the entire front, which is becoming quite common on EVs of today's day and age. But what is different is this Fratsonic logo that we have in the middle of the Challenger here. And I must admit, it looks quite good. I'm a very big fan of it. It's got a really cool presence design to it, and it just makes the whole front end of this car look so aggressive. And quite honestly, unlike a lot of EV vehicles, all the vents along the bottom half of here, they're functional. These are legit vents down through the middle. These side ones are fake, but like this thing looks like it could be a gas-powered vehicle, which of course it will be here in the near future with the Hurricanes that are coming soon. Unlike the Challenger, there used to be the Challenger and the Charger. The Challenger being the 2-door, of course, the Charger being the 4-door. Here we now have the Charger Daytona, which is going to come in a 2- or 4-door. So this is on the same platform, same body. It's basically just going to take this area right here and add an additional door back here. Exact same everything, just going to add an additional door, which I think is going to be really cool. Something that's kind of interesting or looks strange on the side of the Daytona EV 2-door here is this section right here. It's just massive. It's hard to put into perspective how big this area is on this car, but it does allow a lot for the backseat passengers, which we'll get into in a second. This thing does mean business, however, with its tire and wheel setup. 305s on the front, 325s in the back, 6 piston Brembos up front, and 4 pistons in back when equipped. And my goodness, they are massive brakes. Before we wrap it up with the rear, I need to give a huge shout out to Apple Autos for supplying the Charger Daytona EV used in today's video, as well as the Hellcat. If you guys are interested in purchasing either one of these vehicles, they are both heavily discounted off MSRP, and they are one of the #1 dealerships here in the Minneapolis area. So if you're interested in a new CDJR product, be sure to check out the link down in the description below. And now around back of the Daytona EV, I really like this teardrop style design of the black roof that goes across the whole back of the this car, you get a really good view of it from here, which of course we're going to show off that hatch here in a minute as well. Biggest trunk I've ever seen on a coupe, by the way. But just the whole back of this car, I love how sinister these taillights look. I was looking at the Challenger and the Charger Daytona, kind of like side by side at this angle here. One, you can get a good view at how much longer the Daytona is when they're parked at this angle, but you also get a really good view of how cool this taillight looks and this rear bumper kind of sticking out looks. Great looking design from the side and rear profile of this car. Also from this profile, you get another great view of what I was talking about earlier about how kind of awkward this area looks. It's just so massive. It looks like it should have another door in my opinion. I think it's a great looking car. That area is just huge. Almost like the BMW M4, if that makes any sense. Where the Challenger just looks, I don't know, better proportioned. On the bottom of the Daytona EV, you do have the word Fratzonic listed down at the bottom, where you basically have this plastic chambered area for the speakers that are your new exhaust system.
We're looking forward to telling you what we think of that exhaust as well as the interior and driving impressions in just a minute. But before we get there, I want to hit on some things that I think are interesting with what Austin just shared with you. So first off, I'm going to start with, I like the history that Dodge is pulling into this. We have the logo up front, the Scat Pack, originally introduced in 1968. What was different from 1968 till now is the EV is now running a little bit over 11-second quarter mile, where back then, the big bad Scat Pack was running a 14-second quarter mile. And Austin mentioned the brakes. I think that's a pretty good talking point. Over a 16-inch rotor on all four corners. It's actually the same size brake rotor on all four corners of the EV here, with a 6-piston front, a 4-piston rear. Now you go over and you talk about the, not this one, but the biggest, baddest wide-body Hellcat. You had a 15.4-inch rotor up front.
Now that we're all done talking about the design on the outside, let's move our way into where I find this to be the most impressive two-door coupe I have ever seen in my life, and probably the most impressive one when it comes to interior space that's ever been manufactured, which should be obvious when you look at the outside of this car because it looks like a tank, but I mean, this is insane.
Yeah, talked about practicality with luggage, with your like daily driving aspect. There is tons of room. Even though you have the slanted like roof design, you have the complete pass-through. So like you can haul a dog in the back of this thing.
Heck, you could probably haul like sheets of plywood in the back of this thing.
You put the seats down and that's like serious business. And like obviously we're not here to talk about the cargo space, but it is like something that sticks out to you when you get in it to the first time, is not only do you have this massive open roof, but like sitting in the back seat of this, it like feels like you're in a stadium. Like there's just room everywhere. And then if you're in the front seat and you look back, it's like you're in a Suburban. It's like, oh, like it's way the heck back there. And like bringing the Challenger back into the picture here really quick, like the Challenger is so old and dated that like this is really appealing when you start looking at like what they did with the design.
Before we even comment on anything, we need to bring up that this car already has an issue with less than 30 miles on it. The passenger seat stopped working mid-filming, so my knees are absolutely crammed up against the dash right now, and there's no fixing it at the current moment.
You have excellent room in the back though, so there is a plus there.
Plenty of room in the back seat of this thing. Now, I do need to give a massive compliment right off the bat to this thing, because the second I stepped into this vehicle, I did have to question if this was a Stellantis product. I really do think they knocked this thing out of the park compared to the previous variations of what they used to put out. Stellantis has been known for a long time to be the king of plastic party, cheap materials all throughout, and they've really been changing that with their Ram lineup, and now seeing that trickle into Dodge is really something I'm quite happy about. This carbon fiber, this is real carbon fiber, by the way, wrapped around you going all the way onto the dash with this ambient lighting that is on 24/7, like in the middle of the day. I've never been in a car where the ambient lighting is this bright. Like I can see it clear as day on the inside of this thing. I am genuinely impressed. Dodge did a great job with this interior, the fit and finish, the design. And I also need to give one more shout out before I let you take over here. This has been the most impressive car that I've ever seen go from a concept car to a production car with such minimal changes. They originally released this car like 3 years ago. I saw this car in person, the Banshee variation at SEMA, and I don't see any differences between that one and the actual production version that we're sitting in today. So good on you, Dodge, for making such a beautiful production car, or a concept car that actually went into production.
I'll share some of my first impressions with you on this car, and I always love those first impressions because it's what captures you. But if you go in a lot of cars, you also pay attention to the things that might wear on you or might annoy you. So let me share some of those. First, let's start with the good. I like another retro, at least it's kind of corny, but kind of cool at the same time, like the shifter, right? So they went off the like legendary 1970s pistol grip shifter is what they're going for. At least in my opinion, that's my take on it right when I grab it. That was the very first thing I thought of is, they're trying to make this a pistol grip. Haven't looked that up, don't know if it's true, but that's where my head goes. The other thing that really stands out to me is this car is so wide that when you open the doors, you would think there's a running board out there, and it's so obvious that it actually says no step on there.
Yeah.
So like, very interesting. Getting back to like the inside though, I'm with Austin that they did a good job from a visual standpoint. Now going to back to the fact that they say this is a muscle car, and you turn on the, what is it called? The what exhaust?
The Fratzonic.
The Fratzonic exhaust. So when that's rumbling in here, it's like a true muscle car because you can actually hear plastic parts rattling.
You can, yeah. You can, like, everything on the interior rattles when you have it in the drag setting. It is so dang loud. One other thing I wanted to comment on about that exhaust I didn't bring up is when you're standing outside, I don't get this feeling with gas-powered vehicles, but it must be the frequency or the size of the subwoofer that they're using in this thing. I genuinely feel like a vibration in my chest when I feel this thing just idling or revving. It's definitely interesting. You get that same feeling on the inside as well. And another thing that I wanted to bring up when you brought up that no step thing, getting out, when you do get out of this car, it's up so dang high and it's so dang big, you could mistake it for an SUV getting in and out of, or a small crossover. That's how easy it is to get in and out of this car, and that's where, or how high up it is off the ground. So just something to comment on.
Something that is appealing about it is its size, that if you were to buy this, whether it's in a gas version or the EV version like we're in here, is like, it's comfortable. The seats are comfortable, where your arms sit are comfortable. Like you can get the steering wheel in a position that it feels right. And it's kind of fun that it's a square and has the right spots to put your hands, and the dashboard is laid out well. But just talking about the back seat for a minute, as long as the seat actually works, you tilt it forward and then the power takes it forward and then it comes back. When you get back there, initially it's comfortable. I'm 6 feet tall, and I found this to be interesting is my head hit the arch of the roof, not the top of the roof, but the arch of the roof, to the point that I didn't actually hit or was able to make contact with the headrest. I thought that was very interesting. Now looking back at the Challenger, bringing that back into the equation, it definitely has more room than the Challenger in the back seat.
Significantly.
Like knowing that it's 10 inches longer, it's obvious that there's going to be more room in it. The thing that's interesting is I really have to question which one is more comfortable in the back seat, other than the Charger has more legroom. That is obvious. Same center armrest, like similar quality in seats. It obviously looks a lot cooler in the Charger, but there's some stuff to be desired.
My initial driving impressions are being behind the wheel of the Charger Daytona EV. One, this ambient lighting looks super cool. Two, it's honestly really distracting. I am aware that you can change the brightness inside of here, but my goodness, there's like almost so much of it in the corners by my arms, or like where my arms would sit, that it can be quite distracting. So if you're just driving and trying to pay attention, it might not be a bad idea to shut it off, but I'll keep it on for the video's sake. It does look really cool. It also reflects really bad on the windshield. I have some pretty bad reflections of the ambient lighting. The other thing is this is one of the first Dodges I've been in that has a heads-up display. Some of the Rams do have it, but this Dodge, it looks really nice, but it's pixelated. I can see like the individual pixels in it, so it isn't the most clear picture that I've had inside of a car. And also, it isn't like super sporty. You know, the Challenger has more of a sporty driving position, where this just kind of feels like a laid-back cruiser. I don't feel, I can't get myself into a driving position where I feel super ready to like take on a track day or something like that, if that makes any sense. And I have to move
too close to the steering wheel to be comfortable to have a great steering position feel. This is the furthest out the steering wheel goes, and this is the closest I can get to it without feeling kind of awkward. So I do wish the steering wheel did come out a little bit further. The gauges are overall very easy to see with the squircle. Let's get to driving this thing and see what it's all about. First acceleration here in drag mode. Let's see what it does. I don't know if you guys are experiencing this as well with the microphone, but I have to admit, like, you know, in a lot of cars, I just love exhaust. My Corvette is like completely straight pipe cam. It's obnoxiously loud. I love like just super loud Hellcats and whatnot, but like I find myself wanting to almost shut the sound off versus listen to it in here. It's quite honestly obnoxious. Like it doesn't have a great tone to it. The sound when you let off the gas, I'm just not a fan of. Under heavy acceleration, it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it doesn't sound a whole lot different than my Equinox EV does with its piped-in sound. It's just louder. Like, it doesn't sound like an engine. It doesn't sound like a V8. It's just a sound that's unbearably loud. Quite honestly, had to get out of drag mode. It was just way too loud. Let's see what it does in auto. It spins all 4 tires, which I don't really experience in many EVs. They do a pretty good job of that traction control, but it's like they kind of let loose a little bit here to make it feel a little bit more playful. It's a quick car, but it's just, I am lacking that feel of a Hellcat. I just don't have that muscle car feeling no matter what I'm doing. And taking it around some corners here, it is very cold out today, guys, so we're not going to drive the Hellcat. But we do have a lot of time behind the wheel of Hellcats, and we've actually gone to Radford Racing School and taken them around the track, so I'm very familiar with how those cars handle. And I feel more connected to the road in the Hellcat. I just feel like I have a better sensation of what's going on in front of me. I know the Hellcats are big cars, but yeah, I don't feel like I have much road connection. I don't know where the front of the car is. I don't feel like I can place this car where I want to place it around corners here. It is unbelievably quick. It's very quick. It's not a Model S Plaid by any means, which, by the way, you can now get on the used market for almost half the amount of this car costs. I don't know, guys. This is just a hard sell in my opinion. I'm gonna try to show this on video really quick. Ready? I'm gonna tell you when I floor it. Now, yes, that did feel like it was probably pretty instantaneous for you guys as viewers, but I can't explain it. It's like there's a quarter of a second, a half a second delay from me hitting the pedal to the car actually moving. It feels like you know, EVs are supposed to be this instantaneous rocket ship. I'm supposed to have all the feedback right off the bat, but my Equinox EV does a better job of giving me that feeling than this Charger does. It feels like there's a delay, almost like they wanted it to feel like it was a gas engine. However, the Hellcat has a quicker throttle response than this car does.
Austin, there's a lot of different cars that come out, and it's like sometimes they look better in photos than you see them in person and you're let down. And then the complete opposite. Sometimes you see them in person and you're like, that looks way better. This is cooler than any video I saw. This sounds better. This looks better in person than it does in photos. To me, that is true on the Charger EV. A lot of my first impressions on this car were really good. But when I actually take the time to process and would I want to own this? Do I think this is really cool? That thought doesn't last very long, because I would choose a Hellcat any day over this. It would be really cool if that interior was in that car with that motor. I'm just saying.
I would fully agree with that, and it is kind of interesting. We went ahead and took a tape measure out just for fun and measured the distance across the Hellcat engine and measured the distance between the arches on the strut bars on this thing, the Charger Daytona. The Hellcat looks like it would fit inside of this thing. And with Tim Kuniskis, or Knuskis, however you pronounce his last name, sorry if I butchered it, back as the CEO of Ram, apparently it's not out of the question that there might be a V8 variation of this car coming soon, which I think would be very cool. But I'm still just struggling here because the Hellcat, we always made fun of it, calling it a boat, and if that thing's a boat, this thing's a total yacht. Like, this is such a big car.
So I was just recently at Barrett Jackson, where Dodge had their driving experience, going back to the muscle car area. So we had Ford out there with the Dark Horse, and we had the Supras out there from Toyota, and then we had Dodge. Like, the Supras and the Mustangs are showing how much they can handle and how precise of a car this is. Then you have this land yacht out there that looked like a land yacht with the body roll as its back tires are smoking, and it was just lap after lap of the EVs. Like it's still the Hellraiser car, right? That's what Dodge is still going after. That's the clientele that Dodge is still promoting.
Yeah.
Except it's an EV.
I do genuinely think this is a cool looking car. I'm excited to see what the future is with this car. I just, in this current state, the way I look at it is, this is a vehicle I could look at owning in 2 to 3 years as a really cheap lease, or a really cheap car on the used market. I just genuinely could not see myself ever spending $85,000 as the sticker on this one. And I just genuinely couldn't see myself spending that much money on this car. This car, I could see that happening. This seems like a great daily driver, something you could drive year round, something that is just enjoyable to drive. This seems like something that you'd take out on the weekends, and I feel like that was taken away. It is not the fun car anymore. It's now something that can be used to daily drive, is the way that I look at it. So it's no longer Dodge's muscle car. It's turned into, quite honestly, an electric daily driver. So thank you guys so much for tuning into this video today. I'm curious what you guys have to say about the Charger Daytona EV in the comments below. Do you like this overall car? Like, would you buy this car if it had a Hellcat in it? Or is it just plain old too big? I'm genuinely curious. Let us know.